Well, good morning, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome into another very exciting Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants broadcast. If you're joining us for the first time, like so many of you are today, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. And you are catching us smack dab at the end of our epic Ocean Week celebrations. Now, every year since we were founded back in 2014, Ocean Week has been the biggest thing that we do, June 1st through 8th, celebrating with people all over this planet, doing amazing stuff to understand and conserve our seas. And this week has been no different. We've had 21 broadcasts by the end with some of the coolest scientists and explorers on planet Earth. They are all on our YouTube channel. You can explore and discover so much right there. Now, before I dive in with today's speaker, literally and figuratively, I want to note we do have a Kahoot today. So between our talk and Q&A, if you want to play along with a little 4-question quiz to test your understanding for some bragging rights, you can pull up that game pin below. It's going to be an extra way to keep it interactive and fun. But of all the programs you could have joined us for, I'm particularly excited you're joining us today. Now, the last time we had our speaker on, she was on board an epic vessel out in the ocean doing amazing research expedition. Now, she's going to talk a little bit about that journey today. She did such an amazing job. We just had to have her back. And I could list a whole bunch of accolades for Moronke Harris and all the stuff that she has done over the last year. But I'll say this, I have been in science communication for about 11 years now, and I have seen no one's star rise faster than hers. So there's no one doing a better job of bringing the ocean to classrooms, communities across Canada, across the entire world. We've got a lot of Virginians today than Moronke, and I'm so excited for you to meet her and go on a little bit of a deep sea journey. So without further ado, welcome to the broadcast. Welcome to Ocean Week, and thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. And thank you for that amazing introduction. You always give me the best introductions.
You rock. It's really easy to do my job because I get to hang out with the coolest people on planet Earth and make them sound cool. And it's really easy. I pinch myself daily at how lucky I am. So I'm leaving though. I'm ditching it because no one's here to hear me talk. And look at this amazing picture you got of the Nautilus to kick us off. So take us away.
Do. All right, well, I'll start off with the oceans being a key element for the existence of life on Earth. As some of you may know and some of you may not know, the atmosphere that we breathe, which controls the weather and the climate, is really intimately connected to our oceans. About half of the oxygen produced by plants is produced in the ocean, and the oceans are also responsible for absorbing 50% of the carbon dioxide that humans have released into the atmosphere by burning fossil fuels for energy. So although the ocean is so important to our existence and our survival, there's a lot that we don't know about it. And throughout this talk, you're going to come with me on not one, but 4 separate research expeditions. So we'll cover them very quickly. But what I'd like to start with is the fact that there's this overview of this immense potential that we're faced with. So 66% of the entire planet is the deep ocean, which is waters below 200 meters. But only 0.001% of the deep sea floor has ever been visually observed in the over 70 years that we've been going down there and observing it. So since 1958. And this is only an area about the size of Belgium, which is a pretty small country. So our oceans remain largely unknown, especially the deep sea. It's dark, it's remote, it's full of mysteries, but that is exactly where the adventure begins. So before we dive in, I'll tell you a little bit about how I got here. Within the ocean science community, there's this very common origin story. So many career aspirations were rightfully sparked by time spent on or by the sea. And I grew up in a landlocked area of Ontario, Canada. So the ocean wasn't exactly a part of my everyday life. Instead, I found myself glued to documentaries and films like James Cameron's The Abyss. And I really wanted to dive headfirst into the treasure trove of revolutionary discovery. So coupled with my imagination, these pieces of media were really the lifeline that tethered me to my future ambitions and guided me towards where I am today. And today I've spent over 150 days at sea working with teams of incredible people, collaboratively exploring our depths. Now, as a deep sea explorer and an oceanographer, my passion really lies in exploring the most uncharted realms of the ocean, where we have mystery, discovery, and innovation all converging together. And at sea, I'm most often found on the back deck or in the wet laboratory. So I spend a lot of time processing samples and training interns and guest scientists. And these expeditions are 24-hour operations with hundreds of samples collected. So by the end of an expedition, we get a little bit sleep deprived and loopy, as Roy is demonstrating here. We also really like our equipment, as Roy is demonstrating here. But since the deep sea environments are found thousands of meters below the ocean's surface, most of the time humans use specialized tools to reach them. So these tools are our eyes and our hands in the deep. And there's the ship, of course, the research vessel, which is our floating command center. But we also use autonomous underwater vehicles, which you're seeing in the two photos on the top. Those are launched and they fly solo because they're pre-programmed to map and sample all by themselves. And then we also have deep sea landers, which you're seeing in the two photos on the bottom, and they're hoisted over the side of the ship and then dropped. And they free fall all the way to the bottom of the ocean, and they record everything from creatures to water chemistry. Now, submersibles are my personal favorite, and these can be manned submersibles like human operated vehicles or HOVs. But due to risk and cost, because time is money in the deep sea world, the ships cost anywhere from $30,000 to $50,000 a day to run, just the ship, so very expensive. So we more commonly use ROVs or remote operated vehicles. So on the top left, you're seeing an ROV called ROV Ropos, and it's one of the most well-known Canadian-owned and operated ROVs. It's owned by the Canadian Scientific Submersible Facility here on Vancouver Island, where I am. And it was used to set the record for the deepest ROV submersible dive in Canadian waters, which was over 3,200 meters deep on a 2023 expedition. Now, ROVs, they're tethered to the ship via a fiber optic cable. So they're controlled by scientists and ROV pilots on the ship in the control room, and they're connected by that cable. And this is what it looks like in the control room. So it's a dark, cold room about the size of 3 shipping containers in this case, and it's filled with lit up buttons and screens and switches displaying the robot submersible's vitals and multiple angles of its view as it descends through thousands of meters of crushing pressure into the abyss below. And usually in the control room, the pilots and the navigation specialists sit in the front, while the scientists like myself sit in the back row and direct sample collection. So we're just asking the pilots and the navigation specialists where to go and which samples to pick up, and they're really kind and they pick them up for us. So this allows us to see exactly what the robot or the ROV is seeing in real time, and this is really where the magic happens. The air is always super thick with anticipation. We're all wearing headsets, and you can hear your teammates exchanging instructions and the occasional joke over the airwaves coming through those headsets. So we're living on these ships from anywhere from a week to multiple months, and my longest expedition was 40 days. But when we send the robot on a dive, we see all sorts of things. So we see dynamic ecosystems, we see spider crabs, lots of deep sea fish, and even skates, which are related to stingrays. But what I really want you to take away from this slide is that the deep sea is vastly diverse. There's a lot of different life and biodiversity that exists down there. And before we continue, I do have a question for you. What kind of deep sea creatures do you know that live in the deep?
Ooh, okay. Our YouTube class, if you want to chime in the chat, we'd love to hear from you. StreamYard classes, I might come to you live. So Mrs. Lascombe's class, if you think of any creatures that live in the deep sea, are there any that you want to yell out?
Nick, put the volume on. Can we hear you?
Yeah.
Blobfish.
Yeah. Blobfish. I knew it. I could have bet $1 million. That would have been the first pick. Way to go. Mrs. Carnes' class, what about you guys?
Way to go. Mrs. Carnes' class, what about you guys?
Lightfish.
Lightfish.
Light fish, things that glow in the dark. Fantastic. And then YouTube, we're going to take one more. Anglerfish, blobfish. Some great answers.
That's amazing. So I can see you know a lot about the life in the deep. And yeah, it's vastly diverse. There's so much life down there. And for a long time, it was thought pretty barren. So we'll begin our journey now off the west coast of Canada in the Ocean Network's Neptune Observatory Network, which is about 200 to 300 kilometers, depending on where you are in the network, west of Vancouver Island, where I am. And this is where I had my very first expedition, which I will never forget, and you will learn why soon. So in 2021, I was standing on a shipyard dock. I was surrounded by the buzz of machines, and there was this salty, chilled air filling my lungs. And for the next 28 days, my home would be the 70-meter vessel that spanned in front of me. And I was extremely happy to be there, but also extremely nervous because I was the youngest person on the team and I really wanted to prove myself. And my research relied on this $12 million ROV robot that was going to be diving 2,000 meters down into the deep to collect samples. It was arguably my most important teammate. So every day on the expedition, I waited my turn for about 20 days. I was waiting to see when it would be my turn to direct the sampling, this collection in the control van. And on one particular day, I made my way to the lounge to wait for 3 p.m. pastry time. So one thing and one fun thing that a lot of people don't know about deep sea research vessels is that there isn't really a shortage of funding. So there are pastries aplenty, at least on this ship that I was on. And the lounge, being the most comfortable area of the ship, outfitted with couches and screens displaying footage from the current dive, was the best place to wait for pastries and also for my turn to be in the control room. So as I was watching that screen, something funny happened. The feed completely cut out. And how did it cut out? Why did it cut out? At first, I didn't know, but I quickly learned from my teammates that the tether connecting our submersible, anchoring it to the ship, and supplying our video feed had somehow broken. So we lost the ROV. It was gone. There was no video feed, no connection, just silence and shock. A $12 million robot was sitting at the bottom of the sea, 2,000 meters down, and at the moment, we had no idea how we were going to get it back. It turns out that this is a very rare occurrence. So what are the chances that it would happen on my very first expedition? You can talk about acting under pressure. But you know what our team did? We immediately started planning, we started forming strategies, looking for solutions, and contacting other ships for help. And within 2 weeks, we had our submersible back thanks to the help from another ship and another submersible. So it was really admirable to witness how easily all of my shipmates transferred from this moment of utter hopelessness and a lot of tenseness to, wait, we can fix this and we can do it if we work together. So that moment taught me something big, and that's that deep sea science demands teamwork and it demands a lot of courage as well. And that was just a Sparks Notes version of this story, but more of it is available on the Story Collider podcast if you're interested in listening to the whole thing. The episode is called Failure because there is a lot of that in science, but you just have to try, and try again. So now for our next story, we'll head somewhere a little bit warmer. We'll go all the way down south to the Galapagos Rift, so I hope you packed your sunscreen. And now, being heavily biased, I believe that the starkest example of the really unparalleled opportunity provided by our ocean lies in my particular research focus, which is something called hydrothermal vents. And the world of these superheated seafloor geysers wasn't discovered until 1977. And when it was discovered, it completely flipped our understanding of life on its head. It broke all the rules of how we thought life worked, unapologetically. Thousands of meters below the surface in complete bone-chilling darkness where photosynthesis couldn't possibly occur, communities or scientists found dense communities of new animal species not only existing, but absolutely thriving. So it was like nothing we had ever seen. And these seafloor superheated geysers, they're located in regions of intense volcanic activity on the seafloor. So where new seafloor is being formed, and they release these plumes of scalding mineral-rich water that kind of looks like smoke. So they are called smokers sometimes, but that water reaches up to 400 degrees Celsius. And like snowflakes, no two vents are ever exactly alike. We have over 180 species of animals and different life that are found on vents and endemic, which means that they're found nowhere else in the world except on vents. And still, no two vents host exactly the same communities. And this is especially true when you look across different regions of our world's oceans. So you can see the Indian Ocean has a whole bunch of different life compared to the East Pacific Rise. But I want to focus on the East Pacific Rise because that's where the Galapagos Rift is. And here we have these giant tube worms up to 6 feet in length that tower over our submersibles. So this is what the worm looks like when it's outside of its white chitin sheath. It looks a little wild, right? It might be a little bit gross to some of you, but it's also extremely fascinating to biologists. So in 2023, I joined a Schmidt Ocean Institute expedition to the Galapagos Rift near the East Pacific Rise. And this is just a video clip from that experience that'll show you a little bit more about what we saw.
So at a base level, the microbes are surviving off the chemicals, and then everything else is surviving off of the microbes. So we're just trying to characterize those communities and figure out what's there first. There's bacteria, which is what I study. There's archaea, and then there's even viruses as well. Sometimes microbes are free living, so animals are just eating them from the fluids or from the rock. There are these white fuzzy bacterial mats that form on the rocks at active vents. Sometimes the microbes are actually found on the cilia of animals. And then sometimes microbes are found in symbiotic relationships with those animals.
The most significant example is probably endosymbiosis, where the animals have special cells for usually one, sometimes two or more bacteria that would live inside a specialized cell in their body. For example, the giant clams we see, they have cells in the gill, which are full of bacteria. And the riftia tube worm have this organ called trophosome, which takes up most of its body. And that is basically a sack of bacteria. It doesn't need to feed, it just needs to sit in the hot spring and wait for energy to happen within its body.
So what I really want to share with you here in the Galapagos Rift is the birthplace of vents, because we went to the place where vents were first discovered. And what you're seeing right now is a very old photo of the Rose Garden vent site at the Galapagos Rift. This is what it looked like back in the early 2000s, but it was discovered in 1979. And here's another question for you. Can you guess why it was named Rose Garden?
Ooh, let's see. Okay. We're going to head to Ms. Moore's class. If you want to click on your mic, we can check in with you and see. YouTubers, you can answer as well.
What do you guys think? Why do you think it's named that? Why do you think it's named that?
They look like a bunch of red flowers. I think that's spot on.
Exactly. All right. So fast forward. We're now on my own expedition to the Galapagos Rift. It's 2023, and I had that surreal opportunity to join other scientists and visit this legendary site. This is a photo from a different expedition, but it's just to see so you can see what it kind of looked like within that control room again. And what I did here was I was able to witness with my own eyes that birthplace of one of science's greatest ocean discoveries. But when we got there, it was gone. So the vent site was no longer active, and the landscape had been completely transformed by volcanic activity. And what we saw wasn't a garden, so it wasn't what you might think we'd find there. It was a bed of volcanic glass. So all that remained of Rose Garden was history covered by Earth's ever-changing crust. And the lesson here was that discovery is only the beginning, because the deep sea is constantly evolving. The ocean isn't static. It doesn't preserve history like a museum might. It constantly reinvents itself. And if we blink, we might miss something extraordinary. So there are so many other experiences I could share, but I picked my favorites to go in depth with. And there have also been experiences in tropical marine sanctuaries of Johnston Atoll on the top and American Samoa on the bottom. And these places are teeming with deep sea corals. So it may be the last place you'd expect to find corals up to 6,000 meters into the ocean, where it's icy cold and light is completely absent. But believe it or not, there are coral gardens that are thriving down there. And in fact, scientists have discovered nearly as many species of deep sea corals, known as cold water corals, as they have shallow water corals, which are those tropical corals that you can snorkel with. But unlike shallow water corals, deep sea corals don't need sunlight at all. They obtain their energy and their nutrients to survive by trapping tiny pieces of detritus and different organisms that are floating by in the passing currents. So you'll find them in areas where there are a lot of deep sea currents and they can catch a lot of food. And the corals themselves sustain more life through symbiotic relationships. And those are relationships where both of the organisms involved in the relationship are benefiting. So what you're seeing on screen right now is a coral, a cold water coral named Chrysogorgia. And if you look closely, you can see there are two separate squat lobsters on it. And I learned that from a scientist whose name is Paula Flores. She works at the Museum of Comparative Zoology at Harvard, and she is wild about squat lobsters. So I walked into an expedition to the Johnston Atoll in the Pacific knowing nothing about squat lobsters, not even knowing that they existed. And I walked out being able to identify 3 different species. And Paula herself has discovered over 60 species of squat lobster. And she discovered 2 of them on our expedition to the Johnston Atoll. So these squat lobsters really like the vantage point of climbing into these corals high in the water column, where they can also take advantage of the food drifting by and catch them. So at sea, there's so much knowledge that each person possesses, and each expedition is a real time capsule of its own. It's a floating village of over 50 residents, and we all have our unique experiences and histories and personalities that we all bring together in this hub for just about a month, and we'll never be able to get that environment back again. So every expedition is different, and it's always incredible. Now, I'll just tell you a little bit why the deep sea is important. The first point is that the ocean is Earth's climate buffer, so it absorbs 90% of the excess heat by trapping greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide and also like methane gas. And also by observing the deep sea and learning what lives in the deep sea, we can spot changes early and understand if the ocean is staying healthy. And then we also have some deep sea animals that have special genes that help us make new medicines, help us grow stronger crops, and also solve big problems. And lastly, the layers of mud on the seafloor that accumulate through years of sediment raining down to the seafloor from the upper layers of the ocean, those layers hold clues about what Earth's climate was like long ago. So it helps us to predict what changes might happen in the future with our own climate currently. But despite all of this possibility for solutions, over 99% of the deep sea remains unexplored, as I touched on earlier in this presentation. There's a lot of possibility here. Now, the last bit of information I'll leave you with is an opportunity to be deep sea explorers yourselves. Nautilus Live and the Ocean Exploration Trust is a nonprofit organization founded by Dr. Robert Ballard, who is the man who discovered the Titanic shipwreck. And every year they go out on multiple expeditions and they broadcast their exploration live 24/7 on their website. They're broadcasting right now, actually. And viewers from all over the world can tune in and send questions for the scientists to answer as they conduct their research at nautiluslive.org. Now, the most fascinating part of my work that I think personally is the rarity, the uniqueness of location, and the potential for discovery, because thousands of meters below the ocean surface, we have this entire world that survives and thrives in the absence of sunlight. And here, scientists explore areas of the Earth that few have seen, and we contribute to the discovery of our final frontier. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you for listening, and hopefully you learned something new.
So cool. I learned something new, and I do broadcast for a living. So thank you so much for this. I want to stress, just for our audience's sake, in the hundreds and hundreds of deep sea broadcasts we have done in the program's history, we've never had someone mention going back to a site and seeing it entirely change. It's the first we've ever featured that. And I think it's such a neat and important story. So thank you so much for highlighting that. It's really, really cool.
No problem.
If you want to come out of screen share so you can see us again, have a bit of a conversation, we're going to dive in with our Kahoot to begin. So find out who is paying attention for some bragging rights together. Now, what you win for the Kahoot, if you've never done a Kahoot before, the faster you answer, the more points you get. And what you win is Moronke and I's everlasting respect. So we are going to dive in with this momentarily. If you want to give us little hints as we go along in this, you're welcome to chime in. One of these is going to be a little challenging because it's slightly different than something we talked about in the thing, but that's okay. If you get it wrong, more opportunity to learn. And then we're going to dive in with our question period. So Algonquin Elementary, we're coming to all you live classes, YouTubers, Miss Payne's class. Hopefully it's all working with you, and we'll have a nice long Q&A together. But let's get underway with question 1. What percentage of the ocean floor has been mapped? So things like the Nautilus Live, things like these big research-going vessels where we scan it. Now, this isn't with cameras and taking close-up pictures. This is just mapped. Is it 1%, 100%, 25%, or 50%? This is a tricky one. And I will say this has gotten much bigger since I was a boy. When I was a boy, it was a much smaller percentage. It's really amazing with things like the Nautilus that we have as much as we do. The answer, 25%, a little over 23% was what NOAA, who's like sort of the leading group, highlighted. So you've been on these research expeditions. Every time you're on one of these ships, they are mapping, are they not, in some fashion, or no?
Most of them, yeah. Most of them are doing hull mapping, so from the ship itself, low resolution. But yes.
Super, super cool. But we're really, again, when it's high resolution, when we're going down, when we're sending ROVs or people in submersibles, that's when we get the really great data. And it's really exciting time to see more and more of that happening. All right. The deepest point of the ocean is how far down? Is it 2,000 feet, like the world's tallest building? 10,000 feet, about the height of clouds? 5,280 at 1 mile exactly, or over 30,000 feet, the higher than Mount Everest. I loved deep sea stuff when I was a boy, but I'm consistently surprised at how many people get this question right when we do deep sea programs. And the answer is, yeah, almost all you got this. It's so far down, and we've sent like 22 people down there now, which is really exciting, and most of them in the last decade. So it's a really exciting time for human exploration of the deep sea as well. Gentle Condor takes our lead. Talking too much as usual. All right, true or false? There's no life on the seafloor. I hope all of you get this right. Moronke, let's give them. We don't even need a hint. This is half your talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll see if you were paying attention.
So special. I really like the fact that, when we talk about 1970s and stuff, that we start really finding this. It seems so far away for our classes, but that was like 50 years ago. Like, this is a whole realm of this planet where there's tons of life. 3/4 of you got this right. There's lots of life on the seafloor, teeming with life. And as we go into our final question, very specifically, we covered what this next creature is. What on earth are these? I'm so glad you featured this. They're my favorite creature. Are they sea plants, calcium deposits, giant worms, or just chimney stacks? They're just random assortments of rock. I think we might know there are rose garden. There are giant worms, perhaps. I would give, like, that's too weird to describe. I was going to say I'd give my firstborn and left arm to see these in person. Maybe not quite that much, but I would give so much to be on a submersible to go see these. They're just so special, and most of you got this right. Way to go. Let's see our leaderboard. And then we are heading to Mrs. Carnes' class first for our first question. So get ready for your query. Miss Lascombe, you're next. Miss Moore after that. Excited Fox is second. First, for all our marbles, is Stellar Echidna. If you are any of these people, let us know who you are in the chat. Way to go, everybody. And come on in, Mrs. Carnes. Take us away.
Mrs. Carnes, take us away.
Hi.
Do you guys use a dichotomous key to classify the animals?
Oh, that is such a good
What a
question.
question.
Yeah.
Wow.
No, I'm not a taxonomist, but also the taxonomists that I've sailed with, like in one of the videos you saw Dr. Chong Chen, he studies the deep sea tube worms and other animals that live in the deep sea, big animals, and they either use academic papers or they just use their big brains because they know so much. So as soon as we're in the control van and as soon as they see a new species or they see a species that they do know, then they can look at it and name it or guess what family it might be from, or all the way down to species level. They can classify it immediately as well. So they've been at this for years. They just have so much knowledge in their heads.
So great answer, but I've got to say, just on the framing of that question, if you want to end up on the Nautilus, you're like their first pick, okay? Like most researchers don't even know things like that. So way to go in 4th grade, you rock. Mrs. Lascombe's class, we're heading to you for our second question. Come on in, guys.
For our second question, come on in, guys.
Why is it called a squat lobster?
Ooh, that is also a great question. I think it's probably because of the shape. It does look kind of squat. Its legs are pretty long, but it stays pretty close to the ground or the coral, wherever it is. So I think that's why it's called a squat lobster. I would Google that, though, and check.
I can try and find out to confirm. I think you're right, but we'll make extra sure by the end of the broadcast. Great question, guys. All right, Mrs. Moore's class, 4th graders, come on in and take us away. Unmute your mic. You're all good to go. Hey.
Have you ever seen a giant squid?
Oh, I would love to. That's actually one of my favorite deep sea animals. I've never seen one in person just yet. We've seen sperm whales come right up to the ROV. There's great video on the Nautilus Live YouTube of a sperm whale coming right up, and you can see its eye right near the camera as well. But we've never seen, or I've never seen, a giant squid. Not yet. Maybe, hopefully soon.
Maybe one day. Well, we've very seldom ever seen them even on film. Like there was a film of a Japanese one that was quite sick from like a couple of years back. And that's the only footage of like an adult one that I ever remember seeing in my life. Like We know them mostly from either being inside the bellies of sperm whales and chunks of them, or from like dead bodies that wash up on shore. Like they're really rare for such a gigantic creature.
Exactly.
And I want to stress for our audience that might not know, although these kids are really killing it, how big is a giant squid? Like, give us a sense of the scale of this monster. It's the best.
I would say it's about 6 feet times 3 is what I would say.
They're huge. Their beak's this big. They've got the biggest eye in the animal kingdom, like the size of a dinner plate, which is crazy. So do check out the giant squid. They're a very special animal. YouTubers, you're killing it too. Great questions, everyone. Mrs. Payne, we are going to try with you guys in a second if you want to flick on your mic as well. But Miss Riddle's class wants to know, do you ever dive personally? Do you scuba dive?
Absolutely. I do. I've never been scuba diving on the west coast of BC. I'm actually going on Sunday, so I'm very excited to scuba dive in the kelp forest. But I've done it all over the world. Tropical Honduras, Lake Ontario, Gibraltar. Yeah, Spain.
Cool. Wow. I'm so surprised, given that you live there, that you haven't done BC. So we had Jill Heinerth, who's probably like the world's most accomplished diver, on the other day. And whenever we ask her, what's your favorite place to dive in the world? She says the kelp forest off BC. So
I went to a conference last year, and I told a diving conference, and they told them I had never dove off the coast of BC, even though I lived there, and they were all amazed. They're like, what do you mean?
Well, I hope it's a truly, truly wonderful dive. The kelp forest, which is this picture behind us, by the way, as a backdrop, is one of the most special places on planet Earth. Really, really cool. Great question. All right. Caesar, joining us in Nicaragua, wants to know, what dangerous animals did you find in your expedition? Any big toothy things of the deep?
There are some sharks that we come across. There are basking sharks, which aren't too dangerous. We have a lot of white thresher sharks as well near the top in tropical areas like American Samoa that like to circle the boat, so sometimes you can see them swimming. Nothing dangerous in the deep, deep sea, unless you consider hydrothermal vents dangerous, because they do have a lot of toxic to us, but not to the creatures down there, metals and minerals.
I think
it's a pretty safe environment.
Something else would get you before the hydrothermal vent if you tried to go down as a person. Maybe the pressure or other things, lack of oxygen, those sort of things. Yeah.
Exactly. You won't make it.
By the way, you're one of the first people to ever mention seeing a thresher shark, which are just really cool sharks, and they never get featured in our broadcast. So thank you for that too, but they're a special, special animal. Oh, all right. You're a really expedient Q&A, so we're going to do a whole other round of these. Mrs. Carnes' class, come on back in and go for it. Hey.
And go for it.
All right, we're coming. Go ahead, Betty.
So what do you think happened to the hydrothermal vents on your previous expeditions?
That is a great question. So I'm assuming you're talking about Rose Garden at the Galapagos Rift. And what happened is what might happen to most hydrothermal vents if they're in an area of a lot of volcanic activity. So about 65% of hydrothermal vents exist on this rift or ridge that runs through the ocean called the mid-ocean ridge. So that is where tectonic plates, so plates in the crust of the earth, are pulling apart or diverging, and you get a lot of new seafloor forming there because the magma from below the crust is bubbling up. So that's all the volcanic activity. And because that volcanic activity was taking place, magma came up and volcanic glass just paved over the entire area. So that's what happened. And it just happened faster than we thought it might happen.
One of my joys of getting to work with a lot of scientists is that scientists can say something that's like apocalyptic for like an ecosystem. They're like, yeah, this volcanic glass came out and just like that was the whole thing. And like, we're really excited about the living creatures. We're excited about the cool geology too. Like, we're just nerdy about all of it. But it's the big grin on our face. Like, look what happened anyway. So thank you for that great question and lovely answer. Mrs. Lascombe's class, come on in and take us away. Hey, everybody.
And take us away. Hey, everybody.
How many animal discoveries have you made?
That is a good question. I have not discovered any new species yet. I am an early career ocean professional, so I've just started. My first expedition was in 2021. So I've only been in this for really 4 years, but I've met older scientists that have discovered over 60 new species, and it depends what you're studying as well, because there are microbiologists that have studied multiple new microbes. There are bigger animal biologists that have studied and discovered maybe around 50 to 100 new species. It really depends what your specialty is and where in the world you're studying and how long you've been at it. So for me personally, no new species just yet.
I give it like 6 months, honestly. And this is the thing about the deep sea is that whenever we go, like whenever we send research vessels down, we find new species, which is remarkable. Like if you go into a rainforest too, every time you really look, a bunch of scientists look, they'll find something new to science. We had someone on from the Scripps Ocean Institute in California, and we asked her, how many species have you found? She's been doing this for like 30 years. She said, I actually don't know. Like there's so many new things that I've discovered that I can't even tell you, which is a testament to both the diversity of the ecosystem and the fact that you're going to surpass her, I think. And it'll be like, we'll bring you back on in 10 years and you'll be like 500 new species alone in one day. Great question, guys. Mrs. Moore's class, we're going to come to you to wrap up in a minute, but I'm going to take 2 more from you two before we end. Time flies and you're having fun. So we're nearing the end of the broadcast. Mrs. Riddle's class wants to know, when is your next expedition? When do you next head out? Not including our scuba trip on Sunday.
Yes, that is a very great question. In February 2026, I'm going to Antarctica. I'm joining an all-female expedition to Antarctica where we'll be on a ship for 24 days conducting oceanic and climate research, and I'm leading the Submersible Science Team. So that's a very exciting opportunity for me. It's with Sea Women Expeditions, and I am so stoked for it.
Yes, I'm pulling up our banner right now. I tried to do that as rapidly as possible, but let me pull up seawomen.com. So yeah, it's very easy to find, seawomen.com. I really encourage you to check it out. We featured several people that are going to be on that expedition before. It's a really amazing initiative, and I can't wait for you. Antarctica is my dream destination. So I hope it's everything you dream and more, and you find all those 500 species that we promised.
I will. I'll take lots of pictures of penguins for you.
Please do. That's my dream. We got another great one online. For kids that might want to be you when they grow up, what did you take in school? What's your educational journey? What would you recommend for our classrooms?
That's a great question. I took an undergraduate degree in general biology because I actually didn't know that I wanted to be in ocean science until the last year of my undergraduate degree. So I was kind of a late bloomer into this space. But in high school, I took the science classes that you need to take all throughout high school to get into a biology undergrad. And then after I finished my undergrad, Google was my best friend because I was living in a landlocked area. So I used Google to search for different research internship opportunities all over the world and just apply for anything, even things I felt I wasn't very qualified for, because I ended up surprising myself, or I ended up improving my skills for applying next time. So my first internship was at the Bermuda Institute of Ocean Science. I was studying corals and artificial upwelling, which is basically like taking big robots, putting them in the ocean and pumping cooler water up to the surface corals to help combat heat stress. And then I went to Mote Marine Lab in Florida, and I was interning there doing water, ocean acidification and chemical and physical ecology. And then I went to Vancouver and I was helping plan expeditions to the Gulf of Alaska. And then I went into grad school at the University of Victoria, and now here I am.
You know, I said at the beginning that no one's stars risen faster than you, and it's that diversity of experience that has made that possible. That is like quite the resume, and I can tell you, as we work with a lot of ocean people, like no one gets that diversity of experience. That's very rare and very cool, and a testament to your willingness to try new things and things that you might not know that much about. So I think that's a great takeaway message for kids, whether you're interested in deep sea stuff, history, art, English, whatever. Like, try things that are outside of your comfort zone, because it can lead to some really, really cool places, maybe including the deep ocean on expeditions or Antarctica. Very, very cool. Okay, this has been so much fun. I want to encourage our classes, oceanweekcan.ca. There's so much there. We're wrapping it up in the next couple of days, but there's hundreds of events still to come across the country. The Canadian Ocean Literacy Coalition made this possible. And if you want to check out more on her, she's got an amazing website. There's lots to explore there. You're on social media. You're all over the place. And I really can't encourage you to do that enough as classrooms, because you'll find out some even more great pictures and stuff from her expeditions, past and present. So before we wrap, we're going to bring in Miss Moore's class to ask one more question, then we'll bring everyone in for a big thank you and farewell. Algonquian, take us away. Hey.
Have you ever done an exploration near the Mariana Trench?
Ooh.
Oh my gosh, I would love to. That is bucket list expedition for me as well. Nautilus Live is actually nautiluslive.org. They're currently exploring the Marianas Trench, the area around it. So tune into them if you'd like to see what it's like right now. But hopefully one day in the future, I'll be able to go on an expedition there as well.
Aren't we happy that kids are growing up in an era where they can literally just see deep sea expeditions and like Mars expeditions like live anytime they want? Like that.
Absolutely.
When we were kids, we had to walk uphill both ways in the snow, no matter where we lived, all over the world. You kids are so lucky. So do check that out. It's an amazing resource. We partner with the Nautilus all the time. They're just an awesome, awesome research platform. Very, very cool. Before we wrap up and say farewell and bring in all our classes to wrap up our Ocean Week ceremonies and celebrations, is there any last message you want to leave our kids with today before we say goodbye?
Sure. I'll leave you with the fact that I got where I am by trying over and over and applying for things that I wasn't even sure I was qualified for. So whether or not you think you can get into this field and do science or do deep sea exploration, give it a try. Make sure that you apply yourself and don't count yourself out. I always say never self-reject. So make sure that you're your biggest cheerleader.
No better message than that. Please do stick around when we're done the whole full live broadcast, but I'm going to bring in all our classes to say a big thank you and farewell. If you're at home on YouTube and you want to scream and yell and annoy the principal, you have our permission, so please do that. But Mrs. Carnes, Mrs. Laszlo, Mrs. Barr,